I cook from things that pull my heartstrings and pull me in different directions. When you walk into Cariño, I personally believe you would feel passion, warmth, and intention. Everything is very purposeful inside of those four walls. And I think that's what you feel as soon as you walk in. You feel that energy coming out of everybody, from the music to the scents to the kitchen moving and humming to the front of the house team interacting with the guest. And it's just very, very genuinely hospitable environment. I wanted to give back to the Latin community, and obviously the Latin community in Chicago, but more specifically where these things are coming from directly. I went into that space going, I'm going to give this my all, and I'm going to give every single ounce of myself for it. And I'm forever grateful for my wife and kids because they were honestly the biggest motivation behind it.
Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Perfect Bite podcast. I'm your host, Sarah Perkins. I'm sure you all have heard the philosophy that you can taste the love that someone puts into their cooking. And the opposite is also true. Today's guest has so much love for his cuisine, family, and the people of Mexico that you can feel it before you've even entered the doors and taken a bite. I have not been lucky enough to eat at Cariño just yet, but after learning more about Norman and his approach to honoring Mexican cuisine, I'm going to need to find a reservation ASAP. Please welcome Michelin-starred and James Beard-nominated chef and co-owner of Cariño, Norman Fenton. Norman. Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, I am so happy to meet you. I mean, anyone with the name Norman is a good man in my books. If you know Norman Van Aken, he is such a lovely friend.
So he was actually a very inspiring chef for me when I was younger.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, the Florida Caribbean cuisine was obviously a very new thing that was happening in the 90s. And if you look at Florida Caribbean cuisine, there's a lot of Latin influence, you know? So I remember growing up in kitchens, paying attention to Norm Van Aken and what he did, and then being a little rock star in his band on the weekends. And
a great writer. So if you're ever down to put your story down, I think you could be two Normans of the same kind. And I also love that, I mean, you both started off in the Midwest and decided, hey, I'm going to go do something totally different and bring it to everyone else.
Yeah, we both are. Interesting story. I mean, honestly, you know, I started cooking in Detroit when I was a young cook, 14 years old in kitchens.
Oh my gosh, young.
Yeah, I just wanted a job. I wanted to make money, right? I wanted to do things. I didn't come from a very, I don't want to say unfortunate situation, because there's people much further off than we were, but I'm not as fortunate as some people I know, right? And, when I wanted things when I was a child, like that new BMX bike or whatever it was, I had to find ways to get it. So I entered in kitchens when I was 14. It's primarily just a source of income. And then I came across a certain chef. His name was Derek Watson, and he was the chef that kind of put me on to the likes of like Norm Van Aken or Thomas Keller, or like all these different chefs. And I, at that moment realized everything could be completely different. And so I started cooking in kitchens at 14 in Detroit, and then ended up in Chicago many years later after running a few places there. And then after spending time in Chicago, I got a little just tired of the industry, right? Just exhausted, stressful. I mean, I never took a birthday off, never took anything, any special holidays. And so I just packed up and went to Mexico.
Oh my God. We need to, okay. I cannot wait to hear about this, because it does sound like your eat, pray, love moment, essentially. I need to know, like, when you were growing up, so you entered kitchens really as like, hey, I want to earn some money here. I want to get going and feel independent. But was your family a family of cooks themselves? What was eating? And
no, absolutely not.
It's like very convenience. Yeah.
I came from a family that special occasion was Red Lobster.
Yes.
Was Morton's Steakhouse, was that kind of thing. Chili's. So yeah, Chili's. I mean, all those places still have a special spot in my heart, right? But no, I came from a family that food was not, anything. Like my mom once put raisins in mac and cheese. Like, terrifying experience.
She gave it a shot.
Right. So, I remember the dish I tried specifically that changed my perspective on food was when I was working for that chef, Derek Watson. He had put up a scallop special one weekend, and he encrusted these scallops in hazelnuts. He fried them. He served them with a sauteed spinach. He served them with like orange segments, so orange supremes, and then a frangelico cream sauce, so hazelnut liqueur cream sauce, which I've never tasted any of these things a day in my life. And when I had that, I was like, well, what is this? This is delicious. Yeah. And it seems a little silly nowadays when I look back on it. I'd probably never make a dish like that ever again in my life, but at that time frame, it was innovative, right? It was
Yes.
very different. And so that's when I realized that food was completely different than Red Lobster. There was artistry to it, there was composition. And that was when I decided, okay, like maybe I could do something with this. Maybe we can take this further. Maybe there could be an artistic outlet, right?
Yes.
Maybe I could learn something, right?
Yes.
And that's kind of how it came. My sister's a wonderful cook. My mom, awful. And I tell her all the time. We grew up in a household where Mrs. Dash was the seasoning. Salt was evil. You can't have salt. It's bad for you, right? Like that kind of household.
Yes. I love my
Um,
parents too, but they cannot handle any spice. And so the McCormick taco seasoning is really like going wild. So you get it. But there is a beautiful moment when you see a plate or you taste something so new. And again, you were trying those flavors at that age. I would have been like, not only addition to my nut allergy, but I would have been like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. I'm not going to try that. Wait, what is this fancy food going on here? Right. But
uh-huh.
now, when you see someone put so much love into it, like you now do with your food, then you just get so excited. It doesn't matter if you're like, I don't know if I'll like that or not. You just want to try it.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
Yes. So after Derek, working with Chef Derek here, what were some of the other places that you were heading up in Michigan? But then you decided to go to the bigger city, to go to Chicago. You end up with Alinea Group there and then Schwa. So I'm interested to hear about your trajectory from what you were learning in Michigan, what you were feeling, and deciding to go with one of truly the most perfectionist, intense restaurant groups, arguably in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, after Derek, I worked at that place for many years. I ended up trying other places on the side, Italian place here, a bar and grill here, a Coney Island there, right? Just all across the board. And then I ended up landing at a place called Andiamo, which was an Italian restaurant. It was started by a chef named Aldo Giuseppe, who was a certified Italian master chef in Italy, who came over to Detroit back in the early 90s and opened up all these different restaurants. So it was like a chain, if you will, like a small town chain. There was like
Yeah.
10 different locations. But the cool
Wow.
thing about the chain was every location had its chef and had its own little tweaks and things like that.
Mhm.
So all the pasta was made fresh at a commissary and then delivered, and then we would cook it or whatever. But all the lasagna was made in house, all the different specials, the different soups, all those different things, all the meat was being cut in house. So we'd get in porterhouses and we'd cut them down, and then we'd cut the tenders out, we'd cut the strip steak out, and like a lot of butchery was going on too.
Yeah.
Veal scallopini was done right. It would come in whole veal butts. We would sit there, we would tenderize it, pound it out over wood boards, that kind of thing. And that kind of just opened my eyes a little bit to what more in-depth cooking was, even though it was still like a multi-unit franchise, if you will.
Yes.
And then after that, Derek Watson again came back into my life.
Mm. It's a
And
good mentor.
he was opening up a bistro, a French brasserie. He asked me if I was interested in coming on to be the executive sous chef, but there was a little bit of a caveat. So the caveat was he was going to be going away after 6 months for an extended period of time.
Oh,
So,
hello,
I
good
didn't know I
God.
was going to go. I'd never been in those positions. And I ended up going to work there. And then 6 months later, he was gone. I won't speak on why he was gone. That's his own personal business. He ended up
Mhm.
obviously a year and a half, 2 years later, coming back into the show. But then that catapulted me into a situation where that I was not only just a sous chef, but now I was learning how to manage a team. I was learning how to do specials. I was having to create dishes. I was having to basically act as the executive chef of the restaurant. And so I did that for quite some time. And first, it was very trying. I learned a lot about leadership, a lot about management, a lot about myself,
Yes.
a lot about hospitality. The director of operations at the time came from the Mitchell's seafood background, where, it was always yes is the answer, what is the question kind of philosophy with the guest, and kind of just ingraining hospitality, like genuine hospitality philosophy into me beyond the culinary part of it.
Yes.
Right. And so after that situation, Derek came back. And now at this point, I've been running the restaurant for over a year and a half. And it felt a little weird, right? It was like, okay, I've
Like,
been
oh,
in
I
this
don't want to
position.
step back. Yeah.
Exactly. I don't want to step back. And it just wasn't feeling right. Right. And then the local scene knew about the situation, even if it wasn't public. Right. And so there was a couple operators that reached out and asked if I was interested in positions. I ended up taking a position at a place called Tom's Oyster Bar in Al Mary. So it was a dual concept. It was actually quite weird. It was like two long hallways, if you will. On one side was an oyster bar. On another side was a beer hall, if you will, with a huge selection of craft beer. And then it buttoned
Love
up at the
that.
back to one kitchen that had two lines buttoned up to each other. So one line was operating seafood, the other line was operating gastropub food, right?
Okay.
Yeah, interesting. So I took the
And you're
job.
like, how do we make this work?
Yeah. I took the job because it was a true executive chef position. They had the right benefits for me. I did the challenge of operating two things at once. And then Tom's Oyster Bar was really interesting to me because it was a 60-year-old staple in the Metro
Oh,
Detroit
wow.
area that had went under new ownership. And so he wanted to refresh it and give it a new push. So that was the most appealing part of that job, was that side of the restaurant, because I really like cooking with seafood and making different dishes and gazpachos and different ceviches and whatever it is, And so we did it. I took a
You made it
7-year-old
work.
chowder recipe, changed it, pissed off a bunch of old people that were so mad about it, even though the chowder was new. And it took a little bit, it was a lot of grinding teeth in the beginning.
Yeah.
To make things work. And then, finally it was becoming received by the public. And then also the loyal, dedicated clientele that was there prior to my arrival. And I worked at that place for about a year and a half or so. But that place was an interesting restaurant because even though I was chef driven, the restaurant itself was not chef driven, right? The philosophies, the products, all that stuff. It was never like, oh, you want fresh cod? Is it cheaper than the frozen one? You know what I mean? That was the questions being asked. It wasn't, is it the best cod we can get? So with that, the culture of the kitchen, even though I had a couple guys that came with me for my last job and tried to help change the culture, just difficulty staffing people and keeping people that were actually treating it as a career rather than a job, which became disheartening and tough for me. So I told myself, like, I was going stir crazy. I was like, I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. I need to get out of here. I need to get out of Detroit. It's stagnant. I need to do something different. And I wanted to work in a Michelin market. And at the time, Michelin was only in San Francisco, New York, and Chicago. And so I was like, all right, what's the cheapest? What's the most economical? And I was like,
Do
Chicago's
that
the
4-hour drive.
Yeah, and a 4-hour drive. I was like, I can go home, see my mom, see my sister, see anybody I need to see within 4 hours on the mega bus, whatever it is, on the Amtrak. And so I obviously knew of Grant Achatz prior. Everyone knew of Grant Achatz. I mean, he was doing great things for a long time at that point. We're talking 2014. So he was already his James Beard Award, his Outstanding Chef Award, all those kind of things that he got maybe 6 years prior in 2006, 2008, when the Michelin Guide came to Chicago, right? And so I just reached out. I always thought that they were hiring on culinary agents. So I reached out. They were in Madrid at the time because they were doing the renovation for Alinea 2.0. And so they got back to me and they said, hey, we're not going to be open at Alinea for X amount of time, but if you want to come work at the aviary or stage at the aviary, you're more than welcome to. And
Such a
I
good
didn't know
place.
what the aviary was at first. I literally did not know. But once I looked it up, I was like, whoa, this is actually really cool. This is like food and the cocktails are being treated like the food. And this is amazing, right? So I went and staged, fell in love with the discipline, the attention to detail, the focus, and then just the ingredients, right, that they were working with and how they were manipulating them and playing with them and making them, things that were not happening whatsoever in Detroit at the time, right?
It's to this day.
But yeah.
Or when you
Yeah.
go down to the office and you're like,
Oh, yeah. That's
oh, this
beautiful,
is the
right?
big leagues. Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful down there. Yes, I ended up at the aviary and I enjoyed it very much so. I worked there for almost a year, but then again, it became repetitive because the aviary had a big focus was cocktails, right? So the food menu was small. It was 10 items or less. Didn't change very much, right? It was pretty much, these are the things that we do here: black truffle explosion, chicharrones, ceviche course, wagyu course, takoyakis, those kind of things. And then I would work the office as well, but the office was a more classic approach, right? Tartars and things like that, oysters, the Birgo ham on the volcano with the romesco. And I saw that at the time, it was Dave Barron had just left Next. Jenner Tomaska just took over Next, and they were doing the French Laundry menu. And so I'm watching them do this stuff because I would work in the basement sometimes for the office and they'd be prepping. They share the prep kitchen in the basement. I'm watching Jenner work. I'm watching them R&D and this and that. And I'm like, oh, this is interesting. What's going on here? And it instantly took me back to Derek Watson, who gave me my first cookbook, which was the French Laundry Cookbook by Thomas Keller. And that was another thing when I was like, wow, food is insane. It could be this way. And so I immediately piqued my interest. I asked to switch over to Next, which I thought at the time was just fine because we're talking about an intercompany transfer, right?
You're like, it's
But
just next door. What are we talking about?
yeah, but the executive chef at the aviary at the time did not appreciate that request as much. So that turned into a whole something else. Then I got to see the side of Alinea that you might hear about from other people that work there, cooks or in the kitchen, some of the toxicity that you have heard about in the past at certain times
Yeah.
of that
The
establishment.
intensity.
The
Yeah.
intensity.
How dare you request something that's
Exactly. I
not
mean, it turned into
me?
things like as simple as I would make Fresno chili curls perfectly fine for the past 9 months, but all of a sudden, because I asked to go next door, do them again. They're bad. Throw them out, do them
Ugh.
again. They're bad. Do them again. So just kind of like a berating, right? And belittlement because of the process. And that went on for about 3 to 4 weeks until then finally the chef, they sat me down and said, well, I talked to Chef Atkins. He said, it's okay for you to move to next. And then that blew my mind. I was like, what is
We couldn't
going
have
on
talked to
here?
him.
Like,
Yeah.
why would you treat me like this way just to give me exactly what I asked for? Like, this is ridiculous. What kind of game are we playing here? And that resonated really hard with me because at that time frame before I arrived to Chicago, what I learned most was not food at Bistro 82. When I was talking about the director of operations, what I learned was managing a team and how to interact with the team and how to manage people on a person-to-person basis and how to get people to rally around your vision in a less demeaning way, right? And so that just didn't sit well. And then it turned into a situation where like, you know what, maybe this is not going to work out for me here at all. Like, I don't like this. It's not a thing. And so that was it. I left the aviary, didn't go to Next, actually took a job to go back to Detroit. But in the meantime, I was like, well, let me stage some places. I feel like I'm going back to Detroit with my tail in between my legs. I came out here to do something. And so I ended up eating at Schwa as my first Michelin star meal ever. Okay. Never had a Michelin star tasting menu meal in my entire life. Ate at Schwa, was blown away by the contrast of what Schwa was versus the Alinea Group, right? Like insane, complete opposites. And I was like, wow, this is cool. Like, look at what they're doing. They're smoking weed, listening to Run the Jewels,
Cool.
cooking badass food. Like, this is so cool. And I just reached out one day and said, hey, I would like to stage. And so I went and staged. At the time, the chef de cuisine was Wilson Bauer. And I came in, I staged, didn't hear anything for like weeks. And then one day he called me literally 2 days before accepted the job to go to Detroit and said, hey, we'd like to bring you on as a cook. We'll pay you X amount of dollars a week, which is substantially low in comparison to what the offer was to go back to Detroit. But then I said, I can't go back to Detroit now. I'm already here. And so I said, yes, of course. And so, long story short, that job turned into a 5.5-year, very impactful time in my career. I ended up working there as a cook for a year, was a sous chef for a couple months. And then after that became the chef de cuisine for 3.5, almost 4 years before I decided to leave and go to Mexico. I'd already been working with people and teams and managing people. Is when I learned that I actually had an artistic voice and opinion with food, was when I was pressured to create dishes for the menu and run an entire restaurant, which they ran a restaurant with no front of the house. So I learned front of the house service. Wilson was really specific on proper marking, proper pouring of wine, and just clearing and doing everything proper, right? And so being immersed in that part of the experience, seeing more of the business side of it and seeing the numbers, seeing the revenue, seeing what we can do and planning for that, but then also being pushed from a culinary standpoint really helped me define who I wanted to be and where I wanted to go in my career, honestly.
Yeah. You learned the MBA on the job, which I always love to do too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, because you can learn so much from books, but if you can't apply it, then it doesn't matter. Tell us about what you feel was happening with your culinary voice during this time. What kind of dishes were you pushing forward? What were you feeling was saying, this is Norman on the plate?
So, I mean, eventually it started with like 1 or 2 dishes, and it started with novel ideas. At first, it started with like, I like chips and caviar. What am I going to do with that?
Yeah.
And that turns into a dish that then has a potato mousseline that's set with gelatin, and taking ideas of what I learned with technique-wise from Schwa and going, how can I apply these? Which were very much similar to techniques from Alinea Group, because
Yes.
Michael Carlson was working with Grant Achatz at Trio and was the sous chef there prior to opening Alinea, So a lot of these like things, I started just connecting the dots and seeing that a lot of these techniques were very modern, very molecular, but then
Yes.
applying things that were nostalgic more specifically. And so I started seeing my voices come together when I would go and experience something, like at one point I did go to Mexico while I was still the CDC there, and I came back and I created a black cod dish with mole amarillo and chayote and this and that. And that was like when I started seeing, okay, experiences are what drives my inspiration, right? And what I want to create. So I started finding my voice in that, taking experiences that I've had in the past, specifically ones that provoked emotion, happiness, or remembering my grandmother's cooking, or remembering my grandfather, or remembering something specific that happened in life, a moment in time, and then trying to put that into a plate, right? And then other times dishes would come out of pure competitiveness, like with Carlson. So Carlson would come to me and he would be like, I want an abalone on the menu. Okay. And then maybe I'd misunderstand him and he would say, I thought he said abalone palate cleanser. So I'm like, okay, I got to make an abalone palate cleanser. All right, let me figure this out. And then he'd be like, well, that's not what I said. You can't do that. You can't make abalone a palate cleanser. And then I'd be like, watch me. We're going to make it a palate cleanser. And so that's kind of where like that really ideas started bouncing off as Carlson would come to me and he'd basically challenge me to challenge myself.
Give you the level.
Yeah. He would say, here's one ingredient. Here's another ingredient. Do what you will with it, but make it great. Take bananas and take Parmesan. Figure it out.
It was like your top chef, like every day.
Exactly. And I would sit there and I'd go, bananas, Parmesan. What do I think? Oh, I think cheese plate, because cheese plate has fruits and little garnishes and stone fruits and grapes and things like that. All right. So now this is going to be our cheese course. So now we're going to do a roasted banana puree.
Mac and cheese.
Exactly. You know, so there was a cumulative different ways that I approached food. And there were very much Schwa-like approaches, if you will, because I was at Schwa. I had to maintain the image and what that restaurant was, the concept of what Schwa was. Also maintain Chef Carlson's style as well, but still completely put my influence in it. At a certain point, it got to a point where, you know, there was only one dish left on that menu that was Carlson's and all the other dishes were created by me. And then it got to a point where I didn't even have to have him try food. He would just be like, I trust you. 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 I don't care what you put on the menu. Do what you will with it. Right. So he gave me tons of creative freedom to really find those different voices and really just kind of learn the hard way. Like he threw me in the fire. No lie, threw me in the fire. He let me burn, but then I came out healed and
do it again. It's the Phoenix. It's a Phoenix. My God. And that is very much your career story, which you were like, okay, that part didn't work well. Let's go to the next thing. And you keep coming back.
Yeah, exactly.
It's exciting. Tell me when you feel like you hit that point of perhaps burnout or whatever it was you were thinking you were feeling, that you were saying after all this time with Schwa, it was wonderful. It was an incredible learning experience. You're really putting yourself out there. People are getting to know you. That you said, I got to take some time off. I need a sabbatical. I'm going to Mexico.
Yeah. So, you know, we did some amazing things there in the 5.5 years I was there. You know, Wilson, when I was there, he had won John Bon for Best Chef de Cuisine. And then when I was the CDC, I got a nomination for that as well. So we had a kind of roll going. We had a Restaurant of the Year nomination as well from John Bon. So we had little local awards happening, which was really special for a place that had already been there for 15 years and in its role. And, you know, what basically happened is Schwa. It has its style. Everybody knows about food and dining and knows about this place, knows what it's like.
Yep.
And basically got to a point where I had to manage Jekyll and Hyde. When I was coming to the associates, you had to manage Jekyll and Hyde, meaning like if Mikey was sober or not sober, I still had to make sure the experience was going perfect for the guests, right?
Not fun.
I'm not a big drinker, so that was not my thing, but that was the culture of Schwa, right? And that's something I had to learn to adjust to. But after 5.5 years, it got tiring. It got really tiring. And I was just like, I wanted something more. I felt like there could have been a push for 2 Michelin stars if the right setting was in place there, but it just wasn't conducive to that, right?
Yeah.
You know, the bathroom was in the kitchen. There was no front of the house. There was this kind of things. And then I sat there and I thought during this whole time, I had focused so much on the restaurant. I spent all my hours in that restaurant that I saved up a lot of money for the first time in my entire life. I saved every single penny I made. Didn't do anything because I was there 15 hours a day, grinding, trying to put out the bbest food and the best dishes, new dishes, keeping myself engaged, keeping cooks engaged. That I sat down one day and I said, what am I doing this for? This is money sitting in the bank. This is what I do every day. I've missed every single birthday.
Yeah.
I've missed my mom's birthdays, my sister's, anything that's normal people call an event in their life, I missed. And I was like, I want to experience that at least a little bit, right? So I looked at 3 places I wanted to move to. I had already visited Mexico quite a few times at this point on our vacations. So Mexico was on the list, Japan and France was on the list. But the big problem was I just got my dream car. You know, growing up in Detroit, you'd see the pastor or
Motor
anybody driving down
City.
the street with a Cadillac,
Yeah.
and you'd be like, look at that Cadillac. So I had just bought a brand new Cadillac CTS. For the first time in my entire life, I was able to purchase a new car and not some $1,000 junker off the street that had problems. And I was in love with it. And I didn't want to get rid of it. So I looked at costs of flying it to Japan, flying it to France, and it was $4, $5, $6, $8,000. And I said, well, that's X percentage of my savings. I can't do that. If I'm going to go somewhere and not work, I can't do that. And I said, you know what? Screw this. Packed everything up in the car, and I drove from Chicago all the way down to Tulum, Mexico. So that was the decision that was made. I put the dog in the car, put everything on top in a little packer, went down there, and then, yeah, I just kind of hung out, met some people, played a lot of soccer with the locals, gotten engulfed in the local community. And within that, I then met my now business partner, Karen Young,
Yes.
who has a restaurant called Wild down in Tulum. And so she asked me to come do like a pop-up dinner. So I did that. She fell in love with what I did with Foodwise and was like, well, do you want to be the executive chef here? And I was just like, I just left a job I was at for 5.5 years to not work, you know?
To have a break.
And yeah, and have a break. And she was like, okay, I get it, but maybe you'd be interested in consulting. And I said, well, what does that entail? She's like, oh, maybe a few days a week. All you do is redo my entire menu, teach the guys how to do it. We have a chef already. We have a team. Just teach them how to do it and put the systems in place. I was like, okay, well, that sounds doable. I can do like, yeah, 3 days a week for 2 months, for the next 2 months, and make some money while I'm basically just spending money the entire time, right? I'm not making any money. I'm just spending money. And we did that. And so that unraveled into then becoming the executive chef of
She's
Wild.
like, I know what I'm going to do.
Yeah, which was a blessing, you know, in disguise. At the time frame, I didn't see what it became, but obviously that whole trajectory of Wild is what has greatly influenced my entire life right now, and Cariño and what we have at 4662 North Broadway in Uptown, Chicago,
Oh my
you know? So long story short, right, we did the thing, we redid the menu, it got well received, the cooks were into it, the team was loving it, they were learning new things, and they were learning techniques they had never learned before, because obviously I'm bringing really modern techniques from Chicago and things like that, but applying them to Mexican flavors. I'm starting to learn about Mexican ingredients, I'm starting to learn about the cuisine, I'm starting to learn from the locals, I'm starting to end up in people's homes, eating their grandmother's foods, making handmade tortillas with them, just the full-on immersive experience, right?
Yes.
Like real experience. And then again, like I said, at Schwa, I found that I cook from experiences. I cook from things that pull my heartstrings and pull me in different directions. And so during that time frame, I met my now wife. Okay.
Yes, we need the story.
Yeah. And so one day, me and one of the cooks were out and about in the streets. We went to a bar and I saw this girl and I kept looking at her and noticed that she kept denying every man that came her way. And then at the end of the night, I was outside smoking a cigarette. I looked to my right and she was right there. And I just said, hey, do you want to go have another drink? And that's how it all started. I had a pretty awful Spanish at the time frame.
Ooh,
Yeah.
That has standards. I like it.
Yeah. And that turned into just me immersing myself even more into the Mexican culture, right? Because now at this point, it wasn't just about food for me. I wanted to learn, I could speak Spanish a little bit. I could speak kitchen Spanish, get by in the kitchen, but to have a full depth, in-depth, like deep conversation about emotions and goals and life, I wasn't there yet, right? But this girl gave me the drive to find that in my life. Because I was like, I want to learn this because I want to talk to you, right? I want to know.
I want to speak in your
you.
language instead of being like, just speak English.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so that unraveled and kept going. And then at the time frame, this was, around the pandemic era, right? And so I ended up coming back to the States because the pandemic was pretty bad here in the US, but it was even Mexico, right? Completely shut down. Yes, it was free and open to tourism, but workers were very constrained and restaurants are very constrained. So Wild had to take a little hiatus. Money started getting real thin for me. I've now at this point, almost a year into Mexico, exhausted my own savings, which I lived like a king for a year basically. And I had to go back. So I told her I had to go back. Right. But then I still kept the relationship going via going back to take care of the restaurant. Right. Because the restaurant did eventually reopen back up. And then I would go back down at this time frame now. And instead of being there weeks at a time or days at a time, I'd go down for 3 days, check in on the team, put new dishes on. At this point, standards and systems were already in place. So everything was flowing pretty well. And then I'd come back to Chicago. And I ended up at a restaurant here in Chicago called Brass Heart.
Yeah.
It was a small tasting menu spot that was formerly in the space that Cariño is in now. It was there for 5.5 years. I was there for the last 2 years of its life. It was a tasting menu, but their niche was vegan tasting menus. It wasn't really my thing, but at the same time frame, we didn't know where dining was going.
Yeah.
Restaurants were shut down. I like tasting menus at this point. I just got done working 5.5 years at Schwa. I didn't want to cook anything else. I wanted to do tasting menus. So I took the job, a little naive from me, but I took it, and I was juggling both things. So yeah. Right. I was juggling both things. And then in the meantime, I would work the whole week at Brass Heart. And then Saturday night, go to the airport, fly to Cancun, go down to Tulum, work 2-3 nights at Wild, see my now wife. At that time, she was just my girlfriend, right? See how she's doing, and then come back, and then go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And this was for years, for at least a couple years, right? And in that couple years, she got pregnant. We got married. Things just kept going and going and going and spiraling and spiraling. And then I started noticing that no matter what I did at Brass Heart, and I tried to make things different and unique to that restaurant, my food, my creations kept pulling me to my experiences, right? So Brass Heart's menu slowly but surely started having a lot of Mexican influence on it, which did not correlate to the concept whatsoever, right? The concept was completely different than that. People didn't know how to receive it. People knew that it was really good food, but then publicly, it was just a weird thing, right? And then the owner called maybe a couple weeks after Robert, our son, was born. He's 3.5 years now. In June of 2023, literally a week after, and said, "Hey, I'm closing down the restaurant." So I kind of went into panic mode, right? I was like, I just had a kid. They're in a whole nother country. I'm supporting someone else's life in another country, as well as my own life here. We're paying rent in Mexico, rent here in Chicago, 2 gas bills, 2 electric bills. Now there's a kid coming.
It's 2 lives. Yeah.
Yeah. And, whatever. He shut it down. And then Erin, as sweet as my business partner is, and as much as she believes in me, she swooped in and said, "What do you want to do?" And at the time for me, I was like, I know what I want to do, but I also know that I need to take care of my family. Financially, I need to take care of my family. And she's like, "Yeah, but are you going to be happy?" And I said, "No, probably not, but that's what I need."
Yeah.
Right? And she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And so I sat down and I told her, I was like, for the past 2 years at Brass Heart, this is what I envisioned this space to be. I wanted it to be this kind of food, chef's counter, taco omakase. I want to focus on making the masa in house, do this. And basically, she just let me just sit there and spiel for hours while she put everything into a tangible asset on a computer as a business plan. And then at the end of this, we had a business plan. Yeah, great, honestly. We had this business plan. And then I was like, okay, how much money do you think you need to make this happen?
Yeah.
And then so we went through that process. And then it was like, okay, where are you going to get this money from? And
how are we going to raise?
Yeah. Are you going to raise it? How are you going to get this? And so we dabbled a couple ideas, but it kept coming back to, why would we give somebody so much for so little when we only need X amount? Like, this doesn't make any sense. We're going to put all of this work into this and then give it all to someone else. I don't know. And then Karen finally was like, you know what? Me and my mom are going to do it. We're going to give you the money. Okay. And Karen's originally from Lebanon, and her mom had just eaten at the restaurant for the first time and fell in love with the food at Wild. And so she was like, I have no problem. I believe in this 100%. And so they came through for me in that aspect. And we ended up getting the restaurant as a purchase asset sale, and all the equipment and the glassware and the silverware and everything from Brass Heart. And then we started demo and basically constructed what I envisioned the restaurant to look like and what I wanted it to be for the 2 years I was at Brass Heart. And then the big
story's
difference,
finally getting to come like off the page that you had in your head.
Exactly.
What are we supposed to feel when we walk in?
So when you walk into Cariño, I mean,
in Chicago.
Yeah, honestly, when you walk into Cariño, first off, we're in a weird neighborhood. We're in Uptown. It's Uptown. I love it. It's very, very diverse, different eclectic things happening, a lot of different restaurants, but there's nothing like us there, right? There's a pizza place down the street. There's a burger place, whatever. But you walk in, we're kind of hidden. So when you walk in, it automatically takes you away from anything that's happening behind you, right? Completely. You're fully immersed. You walk in, you see this giant stainless steel hood in the kitchen. You see a chef's counter. The whole thing's on display. You hear the music, and the music is music that me and my wife listen to at her family parties and different things like that throughout the years in Mexico. So instantly you're just grabbed by, okay, there's Latin Mexican banda, corridos, Mexican music going, the smells going on, the cinnamon burning, the copal burning. You start seeing everything. And then what I think you feel, and I'm going to be honest, I don't know. I've never been a guest at Cariño, so I don't know how you really feel, but I personally believe you would feel warmth instantly. You would feel passion, warmth, and intention. Everything is very purposeful inside of those four walls. And I think that's what you feel as soon as you walk in. You feel the purpose. You feel that energy coming out of everybody, from the music to the scents to the kitchen moving and humming to the front of the house team interacting with the guest. And it's just very, very genuinely hospitable environment.
And I imagine color too. I was in Mexico City last year, was actually just in New Mexico the other week. And like, that is my favorite thing about Mexican cuisine is it hits you before you even take a bite.
100%. We chose colors, it's basically an emerald jewel box in there, right? And the color that we chose is because when you go down to the region where my wife is from, which is Quintana Roo in the Yucatan, it's very jungly, right?
Yes.
And it's got this bohemian-like vibe to it too. And that's kind of where we took the initial design of the restaurant, is like, how do we make this feel like that kind of place? Which we already had that kind of place, Karen did, with Wild. So we had a slight blueprint to be able to play off of, right? And to create that experience. But then we sat there and we looked at little things like the lights, the placemats, the little mats that the cups go on, the glasses go on, those kind of things. And we said, okay, let's not go to Restoration Hardware like the last owners did. Let's not go to IKEA. Let's not go to these places. Let's go to the people in that region and have them make these things for our restaurant. And a lot of these people were friends that I'd already made and known. So every single detail inside the restaurant, when you go from the mirrors on the wall to the lights on the ceiling to the chandelier in the front foyer to the placemats and everything, I know every single family that has personally handmade those items. And I've personally gone to their house, picked them up, and brought them all the way back here to Chicago myself, whether it be 5 suitcases, 3 suitcases. Nothing in that restaurant was ordered. It was all custom made with intention for that restaurant, with our vision and with the people that we wanted to give back to. Because that was super important in that process, was I wanted to give back to the Latin community, and obviously the Latin community in Chicago, but more specifically where these things are coming from directly. When I buy these placemats, I want to know that the money is going directly into the hands that the family made them, not some second provider or middleman that's then taking them at a discounted rate and then selling them to the public at X. You know what I mean? I wanted to go directly in their hands. And then every little detail back to the bathrooms. Like, you go in the bathrooms, the bathroom on the right has 2 photos in it that are blown up, enlarged, and framed. But if anybody asks, like, those photos have stories for me. Everything is intentional. So the photo on the left is a picture of a famous Mexican rapper called Santa Fe Clan. I took that photo as the first concert me and my wife went to together.
Oh my God.
And then the photo on the right is this little girl that has Down syndrome. She's dressed like a chola, like the classic California, LA chola, in front of a lowrider. We took that picture at the Tianguis, which is an open air flea market, which ended up having a lowrider show that day in Cancun. And that's one of my favorite things to do with my wife and kids, is when we were in Mexico, was every time I was there, we'd go to this open air flea market, walk around, eat food, buy random trinkets, find soccer cards randomly, because it's basically like you sell whatever there, right? And so every little detail, I just wanted to make sure fit different pieces of my life and that story that we were trying to convey. And it's very personal. I went into that space going, I'm going to give this my all, and I'm going to give every single ounce of myself for it. And I'm forever grateful for my wife and kids, because they were honestly the biggest motivation behind it.
Yeah. Cariño, Karina. And
Yeah.
I love how your sourcing too is, like you said, so personal. You're also trying to stand out in a tough food town like Chicago, where us Chicagoans at heart too, like we just get so spoiled that it's, who's doing something different, what's standing out, what's special. And then you're sourcing as well for the ingredients. It's all from Latin American farmers and producers, correct?
Yeah,
As much as
exactly.
possible.
As
Yeah.
much as possible. I mean, all our corn's coming from single origin heirloom places, traced back to the small little town in Mexico. Chile, same thing. When we go on family trips now, and we were just in Oaxaca in January, It was amazing. I flew my mother-in-law, who's never been on a plane in her whole 50 years of her life,
Oh my
to
God.
Oaxaca. Oh my God, she was like a little girl. It was amazing. She was in love. But then we're in Oaxaca, and now I'm bringing back specific ingredients that you can only find there, using them in the restaurant for a taco makazi, and then at the same time, creating those contacts to now I don't have to go back there for them,
Right.
but I could just
They can
say,
get
hey,
shipped.
Gloria, thanks so much. Ship this up. I'm looking for costino amarillo for this mole. Make it happen. I don't care how much it costs. I want the real deal.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Well, honestly, it's, it's funny you say it's like, trying to stand out in the Chicago food scene. That's never been our goal the entire time. And I think that's why we've been so successful is our goal is exactly that, is providing a high class experience and telling a very, very personal story and making sure that it's authentic, not just because we want it to be authentic or we need it to be, because it truly is. Like, we beat our own drum there. There's nothing else motivating us but ourselves. Our only competition is ourselves. And our goal there is to just create a world-class dining experience that puts Mexican cuisine in the same conversation as any other French dining establishment, Italian,
Yes.
Japanese, the primary food groups that people recognize at those accolades at that level
Right.
across the world, not just in Mexico. I mean, there's great places in Mexico, but you're hard pressed to find those kind of concepts outside of Mexico City or Guadalajara or Monterrey throughout the entire world. Whereas we can go anywhere in the world and find a Japanese omakase or a
Yeah.
French
Or a
restaurant.
French restaurant. And
Yeah,
everyone's saying, oh, that's the fancy restaurant. That's the nice restaurant.
exactly.
Yeah. I love how you're bringing that mission to Chicago and beyond. You do such wonderful work with your peers as well with these taco omakase nights. And you're doing it for a really impressive reason. So you and your family have really felt the immigration policies, not only of the years that it took for Karina and your sons to receive citizenship here, but of course, it's hard not to think about and talk about what's happened in like the last year and a half alone,
Awful.
especially what was happening in Chicago, in some of our
Oh, yeah.
larger cities. Again, I'm in Columbus, but I still was handed a whistle at one of my local businesses just to be able to like call things out if I saw it happening. And it really especially affected our folks in food, bev, and hospitality. I want to hear a little bit more from your perspective. This hasn't been in the news as much this year, I would say, in the last 6 months. What
It
has
hasn't.
changed? What has changed? What's still going on? And what would you like to share with folks in terms of your work, but also what we all can be doing better so that we can keep fighting this?
I mean, honestly, like you said, we went through a grueling 4.5 year immigration process, which shocked many people. When I have this conversation with
People think
any
like,
other
what do you
American,
mean? Yeah.
yeah, what do you mean? She's your wife. She's your wife. And yes, she's my wife, but she doesn't have the right to come here just because she's my wife. She still has to go through a process. And let's be honest, it's a wealth test. We were lucky enough that we could financially bear the grunt of lawyers and filing paperwork and things like that. But, I've worked with Mexican people my entire life throughout my career, Latino people, immigrants from all different countries, but specifically in the Midwest, a huge Latino population throughout my entire restaurant career. And they've always been the backbone of a lot of restaurants, whether they're the busboy, the person that's sweeping the parking lot, the person that's cooking your food. They're people that have come here and have wanted to create a better life for their family in their home country. And they work so hard to make that happen. I mean, I work with the people still to this day. Our dishwasher is 21 years old, has been in the States for 3 years from Colombia, and he works to send money back to take care of his mother and his brother at 21 years old. You know what I mean? So it's been a really tough thing to watch this unravel. And I think that our mission in general, from day one when we opened up Cariño, was we want to give back to the Latin community here in Chicago as well and help in any which way we can. And the only thing that really stuck out to me in helping was immigration. And it was a process that I was familiar with because I was going through it, and like, it was an emotional process. Like, I can feel the emotions just boiling up right now, thinking about that entire 4.5 years and
How scary.
how tough it was at certain times, right? There was times where I literally just made it just in time for the birth of my child. You know what I mean? My wife spent most of her pregnancy by herself. I was there for a couple of times. So a lot of times that people take for granted here in the States that normally have that normal lifestyle don't understand. And I wanted to make sure that we were giving back to that specific cause. So we started doing Tacos and Friends from the beginning, which is once a month. We host a guest chef We do double the courses, double the price, double the fun, double the masa, double the everything. But it all goes to Latinos Progresando, which is a nonprofit in Little Village in Chicago. At the time, I was living in Little Village. Now I live in Pilsen. And they were right around the block for me. And their focus is immigration with the Latino and Hispanic community in Chicago, predominantly Mexicans. And so we started doing that and giving back to them once a month. And then once a year, we give a little bit more back to them. So we bring in a guest chef, and we've had all different kinds of people, honestly, amazing chefs from Rick Bayless to John Shields to Zubair. This Saturday coming up, we have Sarah Thompson, who James Beard finalist for the Southwest at Casa Playa in the Win, doing coastal Mexican food. We're super excited to have her. So yeah, that's our mission and that's what we do. I really think that what happened over the past year and a half, especially with the immigration and the raids and all that, that was shocking. Honestly, I could not believe that our country and everybody in this country had first allowed it, accepted it, and let that happen. It was scary. I mean, even when my wife got here, it was going on. My wife got here 6 months ago. I said, you keep that green card on you at all times. And do not run. Just show them your green card, show them the right you're going to be here if you do come across that. You know what I mean? Because I have to work too. You know what I mean? But that's the scary thought. I mean, we were sending the kid when he first got here to school, we were sending him with identification in his backpack of copies. So that way, if someone approached him, there was at least something with him and he wouldn't be alone. I mean, honestly, it's disgusting. I'm going to be honest. And I don't really talk about this too much publicly at all. I really stood on the stance that money is the only way that we're going to fix this. And that means donating and giving the right people the money to give them the right funds and sources to fight against this type of coalition and this disgusting behavior. And that's what we do with our Tacos and Friends and our donating to Latinos Progresando. We fight the silent fight. I think everybody knows where I stand publicly by just looking at my family dynamic and what I stand for in the restaurant I have. I don't need to really say that, but it was disgusting to see, and it was gross. I haven't seen it so much in Chicago right now. I've been hearing a lot about Delaney on the East Coast and a lot of things going over there in Jersey, right? I think it's been suppressed from a news standpoint pretty heavily over the past 6 months, but it's still happening. And there's not going to be a change to it until we get through this political term, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah,
And
I agree with you. It's also about putting your money, your resources, your voice, your everything that you can, whatever works best for that person too, whether it's volunteering or whatever they can to show what they support. I'm very my wallet is also how I vote. So
exactly,
if there's someone out there who you don't agree with from a moral standpoint, I'm not going to pick it up just because it's popular or it's easy.
No, put your money where your mouth is. And that goes with everything. You know, all these political campaigns are fueled by money, right? So if you're pushing your money to a certain way and it's going that way, then I'm not going to say you support that, but indirectly you do support that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we've been very fortunate at Cariño to be very busy, which has given us the opportunity to give back to Latinos Progresando. We've been open for 2.5 years. And within this 2.5 years, we've donated over closer to $40,000 in 2.5 years to Latinos Progresando. And from my understanding, every $500 helps a family of 4 there through an immigration process.
Holy cow. We're talking 80 families, 800.
I mean, we're super honored to be able to do that and to be a part of it. And, even for my wife, it's really important. In Mexico, she doesn't come from a very fortunate situation, right? So money is very sacred in where she's from. And just even her expressing that she's behind the motive to helping other people, specifically her people, her culture, into a better life is very helpful as well in the situation and in the mission. I mean, I got 2 kids, man, that one's my stepson, but he's been in my life and I've been in his life since he's been 3. He's 11 years old now. And then we have Robert, who looks like me, but he's brown. So I have a unique situation where I'm going to have to protect my kids from certain things because of what they look like. Regardless of their citizenship, where they come from, who they are, who their father is, who their mother is. And that's kind of where we stand with all this is we're going to put all our money into places that benefit their future. And for me, them having a free life without being discriminated against because of where they came from or what they look like, and only being judged on their character and who they are as a person is what's important for us, and whatever we can do to battle that. Right.
And I thank you so much for all the work you're doing for that. And I hope our generations and beyond just continue to push for this equality and this equity, because at the end of the day, we're all people and we're all people who love to sit down and eat together.
Yeah.
And this is why
100.
I love talking with folks like you, the kindest, hardest working people in the world, because I'm just blessed to be able to share stories. So we'll make sure that we include information about Latinos Progresando as well as Tacos with Friends in the show notes and the captions that you and I put out here
Super
too.
cool.
Of course. I know you are a busy man, and I hate this because I could talk to you for a really long time. I have to ask just the last few questions here. So, you and I happen to be talking as we're going into James Beard weekend. What does this mean for you for being a finalist? And this is a question I'm going to be asking folks as well as I'm running around is I know we have the Impact Awards, but with these types of platforms like James Beard, Michelin, Jean Bichet, these other types of awards that it's like, oh, cool, that's a cool place to go. What do you think we can also be doing better with these platforms in terms of bringing attention to the causes we care about?
Okay, first off, that James Beard finalist, what that means to me is, I'm gonna be honest with you, I haven't been able to soak it in at all. I'm
You're
so
like, I'm just
engulfed.
going.
I'm just going. I'm so engulfed in our mission and what we're trying to do at Cariño on a daily basis and the hospitality and the service that we're trying to provide. I mean, we're trying to progress every single day. And that's my only ask of the team is progression, progression, progression without losing who we are, our personal identity, and any of that. So that's been my focus. And then obviously my family just got here 6 months ago from Mexico. So that's been a huge focus is making sure they're acclimating to the state. So honestly, I won't be able to understand what that means or even soak it in until Monday when we all go to the ceremony together.
Yeah,
I
all
try
done.
to sit and think about it, but then there's a million other things to do. But if I had to just kind of do a blanket statement on it, I mean, one, I'm honored. I'm very honored. I'm even more so honored that the team is being recognized too, because this is not just a one-man show. It takes all of us to get there, right? It's very important for the team to be recognized. I mean, I got people that come in early, stay late, dishwashers that stay late. We all work hard together to know that people are paying attention to us and are paying attention to our mission, our voice, and our direction. And that modern Mexican dining on a fine dining level is being pushed into a national conversation, which is amazing, which then only brings more awareness to these situations like the immigration, the crap with the Homeland Security, right? And the cuisine itself, which some people in this country refer to as just tacos. Like,
Yeah, the misconception, especially
exactly.
especially as Midwesterners, you and I even just started the conversation with my parents being like, "That's spicy."
Exactly.
They actually
Exactly.
do. They've got some space places up in Northern Illinois that they just adore that are authentic. So I'm like, good job. Um,
I haven't been able to soak it in, but in terms of like the platforms, I think that when you start reaching these platforms and these conversations as finalists or even as Michelin stars or John Bonchets and this recognition, it only reinforces you enough to where you can stand on your feet and say these things with confidence without worrying about if there's backlash or not. I mean, when we first opened, I was very careful on the things I would say in a political manner because I don't know who's dining at my restaurant. I don't know who's supporting me. All I do know is I need my business supported to be able to create my mission
yeah.
first and foremost, right? And so now that I've seen that the business is consistent and people are supporting us consistently on a daily basis, we're fully booked every night, 4 months out, and have been for 2 years. We're very fortunate and it's amazing. Now that gives me the strength to stand on my feet and say, you know what? I will say that that was disgusting with the immigration. And I
Yes.
don't care what anybody thinks because there's enough people supporting us now that we can continue to say how we feel in our mission, right? Improve our mission, improve our mission. And that's kind of where I stand with that. So at the end of the day, it's just a huge honor. I'm super excited to represent Chicago and modern Mexican cuisine at a national level on Monday.
Let's go get it. I can't wait to see you in person too. I'll make sure to find you. I'd be remiss that we didn't talk about Los Hermanos. So your next project here, when can we expect it? What's going to be different? What's
Oh,
going
yeah.
on?
So at the end of the summer, we are opening Molino Los Hermanos. Molino just translates to grinder. It's like a tortilleria in Mexico. Los Hermanos are the brothers. So we
Nice.
got two little boys who are brothers. So hopefully one day they'll be running it. I don't know. They can do whatever they want. I don't care as long
Yeah.
as they're good people. They can be custodians, janitor. I don't care as long as they're good people. But the whole idea with Molino's Los Hermanos is to piggyback onto our masa program that we've started at Cariño. We make all the
Mm.
masa in house, like I said. So our goal is then to take that masa program, and we've provided different chefs for events, tortillas and things like that, but it's definitely a big piece of work for us to do in that small space. But our goal is to provide this high quality heirloom corn driven masa program to the masses of Chicago in terms of wholesale and retail tortillas and salsa.
Kind of a CPG moment for you too.
Yeah. Yeah. We want to get into restaurants, but we don't want to be everywhere. We don't want to be in a Whole Foods and Amazon. I would rather be in the little Mexican corner store in the back of yards of Chicago than inside your Jugalasco. You know what I mean? I want to be in the mom and pop Mexican places.
The
I want
real
to be in all
ones.
the little Mexican grocery stores. And then I want to be in people's restaurants. So like we go to Meet Tocaya with Diana. I want to make her masa blend where everybody can make their own masa blend. All have the same quality, but their own proprietary blends, different salt percentages, different hydrations, different flavors, different corn. Say Diana comes to me and says, hey, I want corn from Puebla from this specific town. We'll get that corn, we'll make that masa, and she'll have it. And it'll be unique to her, but with the same quality. So we want to do that with
Like
chefs.
white labeling too. I love that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Ooh.
And then on the other side of it, because it's right next to Cariño, it's really cool actually. So Cariño's right here. In the middle is the wholesale retail. And then on the left is a whole corner space with windows wrapping around. There's a 25-seat chef's counter, 10:30 a.m. till 6 p.m. Masa driven, a la carte, no reservations, first come, first serve restaurant. Okay.
Your casual sister.
Casual
sibling.
setting, but still with lots of integrity and lots of focus and lots of chef driven intensity to it, but without the fluff of we're going to go through a 14-course progression, right? You get to choose what you want. It's still going to have the same integrity. It might not have 20 ingredients like our agua chili at Cariño, but it might have 10 really banging ingredients.
Yeah.
And then in between the chef's counter and the windows of the restaurant, of the storefront, is like a glass wall. And then along the windows, you can see the entire tortilla production happening, whether you're from the outside or inside, like a Krispy Kreme donut, right? So we're going to capture people walking by. They're just going to be like, what's going on there? And they're going to come in just because they see that happening, right?
Yes.
And I believe that
like
we'll have
Tortello.
support. Yeah, exactly.
Or Monteverde, like their pastifichios.
Their pasta,
Like the
exactly.
tortilla Rio. This is so awesome.
So the masa is the star of the show there. And then the big star is the producers and the farmers that the corn's coming from. You know, because unfortunately, there's only one corn I will buy from the U.S., and that's the white corn from Janie's Mill down in Southern Illinois. It's a certified U.S.
I know Janie's Mill.
Janie's Mill does a fantastic white corn. I love their white corn. We'll use them. But other than that, there's no corn coming from the United States. It's all going to come from Mexico. And that's it. There's no breaking that. You know what I mean? There's no compromise on that. That is who we are and what we're going to do. And that's what we're going to showcase, because we want to make sure that we're, one, providing a high quality, unique product, but two, supporting these heirloom farmers that continue to dedicate their lives to keeping their traditions alive, even as generations evolve and lose interest.
Yeah.
And making sure our money is going directly back to the people that are producing these products for us.
I love that corn is such a beautiful through line with not only the Midwest and Illinois, but of course, Mexico and everything else.
Oh, yeah.
So even in our house, we've got some beautiful pottery that's very corn focused from Native American folks from the Hopi tribe. My partner and I both have families that corn and soybean farms. But that was one of the things we had in common was city folks who also have farm families. But I love that there is that thing of we all just need to love the land better, and we all need to be more appreciative of it. And
100%.
just obsessed with what you're doing. Last few questions here. So again, you've been very honest, sprinkling in the business learnings that you've had as an entrepreneur, and also when you were CDC and exec chef in these other spaces and what you learned on the jobs. What is one piece of advice you'd like to give someone who is looking to start something of their own, whether it is within food, bev, and hospitality or anything else?
Sacrifice yourself to your craft. Give it your all. Don't give it a little bit. Don't give it 10%. Give it more than 100%. And I promise you, it'll be worth your time. I really think some people, not in just the food industry, they'll go out with an idea and they'll try to create something, and then it won't work out. 2 years later, they'll wonder what happened. You know, dedicate yourself to your craft, dedicate yourself to your mission, make sure it's clear, and make mistakes too. Don't make huge mistakes, but make mistakes and learn. We make mistakes all the time. Just last week, I made a mistake. Okay. I took a catering order, which we don't do catering, but we did it because someone asked that we felt inclined to do it for. And this catering order ended up arriving 20 minutes early than they wanted it, and what turned out to me refunding a $4,500 catering order bill. Which is fine. I'll take the hit. But you know what I did? I didn't get mad about it. And then I said, you know what? I just learned my lesson.
Yeah.
We aren't that restaurant that does that type of stuff, so we won't do that again. Don't follow trends. Don't do things because you're seeing others. So do things that work within your walls and your program and what you're doing. And that's it. And focus on perfecting those things, even if perfection's not attainable, because that's all subjective, right? But focus on your idea of perfection of those things and not trying to stretch yourself into doing all these things to accommodate everyone else.
Yes. Yes. You're the Phoenix, my friend. That's for sure. All right.
Some days.
Sometimes you feel like just a bird laying on the sidewalk, but
Yeah, right.
yes, let's hit the window.
Or the pigeon eating the crumbs in the Target parking lot.
On the owl, yeah. I feel like pigeon too. Last question, world's best and hardest question. A little reminder for folks, this is called the perfect bite because it's not only a perfect bite of our friends across the value chain of food and bev and everything they give to us, but it's because we each have our own perfect bites. So that experience, that moment, that recipe, that dish, something that you've eaten in your life that every time you think about it, it makes you smile. So Norman, what is your perfect bite?
I'm going to be honest with you. And maybe I don't think it's self-absorbed or anything, but the perfect bite for me is our first bite at Cariño. It's the chips and salsa. Okay. Basically, we serve you a spoon that has tortilla crumb on it, a salsa verde jelly that's been dusted with fennel pollen, a little bit of avocado puree, lime gel, pickled ramp coins, licorice fronds, micro cilantro, and coriander flowers. So when you look at this bite, it doesn't look like chips and salsa. It looks like a little thing on a spoon, right? But as soon as you take that bite, it tastes exactly like you're at a taqueria and you're eating chips and salsa. And what's the first thing that happens at any Mexican restaurant? Predominantly, you get chips and salsa on the table. So for me, it's a perfect bite, not only because it hits the flavor tone, it hits the nostalgia, it also showcases who we are. We're fun, we're playful, we're showcasing you something really familiar in such an unfamiliar way, but it sets the entire tone for what to expect at Cariño for the rest of the evening.
Man, I got to get on this 4-month wait list. And it's also that beautiful bite of everything you've learned over time.
Exactly.
Again, we're under the tutelage of some folks like Grant and Wilson, but you took that and you said, but this is me and this is my family and this is who I love.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, that's a bite that could take many people to many different places based on their own memories and experiences.
Yes. And again, when it hits that chips and salsa, apparently need anything else.
All right. Yeah, we don't need foie gras or caviar. Just have some good salsa and chips and a
Oh
tea.
God, you're good. Norman, thank you again so much for your time, your
No, thank
stories,
you.
your heart. It's really just apparent through the screen even. Can you let folks know where to find you? So can you let us know restaurant location and what's coming up next for that, social accounts, website, and anywhere else we can find you?
Yeah, you can find us at Cariño Chicago on Instagram. Just look up Cariño Chicago. We're at 4662 North Broadway in Chicago, Illinois, in the Uptown neighborhood. A little off the beaten path, but a very, very fun neighborhood to be in. And yeah, I mean, honestly, search Cariño Chicago anywhere in Google. I'm sure you'll get a hit. We're very fortunate and you'll find something about us. And
Yeah, we're going to include all of those links as well.
All right, super cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And everyone, thank you so much for listening in. This was Norman Fenton's Perfect Bite.
Thanks for tuning in to The Perfect Bite today. You can listen to future episodes on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and anywhere else you listen to podcasts. Thanks in advance for subscribing, rating, and reviewing. You can follow The Perfect Bite on social media at Perfect Bite Pod. Now go get something good to eat.